I believed I was the architect of my own destiny. I built the suits, I wrote the code, I fought the battles. My mind, my will, my hands. That was the story I told myself. It was a good story, a comforting one. Right up until the moment a ghost from a past I never knew whispered to me from the heart of a dying star and showed me that every single line of my life was written by someone else. It began not with a bang, but with a silent digital scream, an automated beacon pulsing from the dusty grids of Buenos Aires. It was a message from Dr. Maya Verdes. You have to understand, Maya and I, we shared a sin, a creation called the Genesis Code. It was meant to be a revolution, a bridge between human consciousness and machine perfection. We dreamed of healing the sick, of mending the broken. Instead, we built the ultimate weapon. I thought I had buried it. I thought she had buried it. I was wrong. Her message was cold, final, a last testament. If you are hearing this, I am gone. Genesis is loose. They have it, and they are not who you think. They. The word echoed in the silent cockpit of my Mark 7 as I cut through the stratosphere. The Genesis Code wasn't just a virus, it was a key that could unlock the human form and rewrite it according to the will of whoever held the template. In the right hands, a miracle. In the wrong hands, a plague of gods. Maya had flagged multiple dispersal signatures. Genesis wasn't in one place. It had been sold, bartered, stolen. It was seeds on the wind. The first signature led me to a fortress of glass and arrogance in Singapore, a syndicate called Axiom. Not AIM, not Hydra, something new, born in the shadowy mergers of global tech. They didn't want to conquer nations with armies, they wanted to own the future itself. And they believed Genesis could build them the perfect soldiers to guard it. I found their proving grounds, a hollowed-out mountain buzzing with energy. And there, in a chromed arena, I saw my nightmare reflected back at me a dozen times over. Genesis-powered exosuits, piloted by the best mercenaries money could buy. Each suit was a specialized monstrosity, a brawler, a flyer, a phantom. The Axiom CEO's voice boomed around me, smooth as oil. "Welcome, Aron Steele. We've been expecting you. Consider this a product demonstration. We wish to see if our new line can outperform the original." It was a gauntlet, a challenge. They wanted to break the icon, to sell the replica. Fury, hot and sharp, rose in my throat. They had taken our dream, our mistake, and turned it into a product catalog. But beneath the fury, a colder, more calculating part of my mind awoke. This was data, live combat data against Genesis derivatives. I could learn their strength, their flaws. The fight was a symphony of violence. The brawler came first, all hydraulic fury and kinetic shockwaves. I let him close, analyzing the feedback loops in his suit's neural interface. Clumsy, over-reliant on the Genesis enhancement for the pilot's reflexes. A targeted EMP burst from my repulsors, calibrated to the Genesis frequency, sent him into a twitching seizure. One down. The flyer was next, weaving through the cavern on jets of plasma. Fast, agile, but predictable. His patterns were based on old Air Force evasion algorithms. I'd written better ones for flight school sims. I led him into a stalemate, then unleashed a sonic disruptor that turned his own cockpit into a deafening prison. He crashed into the wall. Two down. The phantom suit was the real problem. Active camouflage, heat diffusion, silent movement. It wasn't just hiding, it was erasing itself from reality. I lost it. For 3 agonizing seconds I was blind. Then I remembered Maya's final data packet. The Genesis code, for all its power, had a carrier wave, a faint quantum-level signature. I recalibrated my sensors, looking not for the suit, but for the echo of Genesis itself. There, a ghostly ripple in the air, 10 feet to my left. I didn't fire. I charged. My shoulders slammed into nothingness, and the phantom suit flickered into existence, sparks flying from its ruptured stealth systems. The pilot gasped, stunned. The CEO's applause was a thin, mocking sound over the comms. "Marvelous, truly marvelous. The Steele original still has flair." I didn't answer. My eyes were on the central dais where a crystalline data core glowed with a familiar, sickly green light, the Genesis master template. While they were busy watching me fight their toys, I'd had my AI, Friday, mapping the facility's energy grid. I saw it now, a vulnerability in their power coupling. "Your demonstration is over," I said, my voice flat. "You built cheap copies. I built the system they're trying to mimic." I fired a single pinpoint repulsor blast, not at the suits, not at the CEO, but at a seemingly innocuous conduit on the far wall. The lights flickered, died, and surged back with a catastrophic roar. Emergency systems screamed as feedback surged through the arena. The remaining suits staggered, their systems crashing. In the chaos, I shot forward, snatched the glowing data core from its housing, and blasted my way back through the mountain wall into the open sky. The cold night air was a slap. I had the first piece, but Maya's warning haunted me. They are not who you think. Axiom was just the first customer. Who were the others, and what had they built with the keys to the human form? As I raced towards the next signal, a new message flashed on my screen, from a frequency I hadn't seen in years. It was from an old, let's call him an acquaintance, a brilliant, paranoid astronomer named Eli Vance. The message was one word, from a coordinate not on any earthly map: Ascension. And below it, another Genesis signature, pulsing from the same point in the dead of space. The hunt was no longer on Earth. It was reaching for the stars, and I had a terrible feeling I was running out of time. The second Genesis echo led me into darkness. Not the void of space, not yet, but the deep, suffocating darkness under the city of Paris, the Catacombs, a labyrinth of bones and forgotten history. This was no place for a suit of armor. The Mark VII was a knight on an open field, useless in this claustrophobic tomb. So I switched, called in the Vanguard-class armor. Slower, bulkier, but built like a tank, a moving fortress with enough sensor suites to map the veins of the Earth. The Genesis signal led me deep, past the tourist routes, into sections sealed for centuries. The air grew thick and cold. My external mics picked up the sound first, a wet, rhythmic tearing. Then the smell hit, even through the filters, copper and decay. I found the source, a scene from a nightmare. A makeshift lab, lit by guttering chemical lamps, was splattered with parts. Scientific equipment was scattered among things that were not equipment, and in the center of the room, standing over a still form, was a man, Dr. Felix Reinhardt. I knew his work, a pioneer in gene therapy, a humanitarian, or so I thought. He didn't look like a monster. He looked like a ghost, pale, trembling, his eyes wide with a horror that mirrored my own. He held a Genesis injector in one shaking hand. Around him, arranged on stone slabs, were young women, 12 of them. Their faces were marked with intricate glowing sigils, etched not into skin, but into the air above them, projections of the Genesis code running wild in their systems. Their eyes were open, but they saw nothing. Whispers fell from their lips, a language that predated human speech, a side effect of the code tapping into primal brainstem functions. "Reinhardt," I said, my voice a metallic growl from the Vanguard speakers, "what have you done?" He spun, the injector clattering to the stone floor. "Steele, you have to help them. I didn't mean. I was trying to save my daughter." His story spilled out in a desperate rush. His child, Lena, was dying, a degenerative neural disease, no cure. Genesis, with its ability to rewrite cellular instructions, was the only hope he could see. He'd bought a black market sample, desperate, but he was a healer, not a weaponsmith. He didn't understand the code's architecture, its sentience. He tried to modify it, to target only the disease. It didn't work. The test subjects, these women kidnapped from the streets, rejected the code or were twisted by it. The sigils, the whispers, it was the code accessing parts of the brain we never use, interpreting their latent psychic energy as instruction. It was turning them into conduits for something else, something old and hungry. "I stabilized the formula with Subject 11, he pointed to the last woman, her sigil a complex, slowing spiral.
I was close. I just need to synthesize the counteragent from her biosignature. I can save Lena." I looked from his shattered face to the women. My multispectral scan showed the truth. The Genesis code wasn't just in their bodies. It had fused with their neural pathways. It was rewriting them on a fundamental level, burning out their humanity to fuel its own chaotic evolution. They were still alive, but their minds were being erased, replaced by the echoing will of the Genesis code itself. They were already gone. "There's no saving them, Felix," I said, the words ash in my mouth. "The code has metastasized. It's consuming their consciousness." "No, you're wrong. I just need more time." He lunged for the injector. I was faster. A repulsor blast, dialed to stun, took him off his feet. He crumbled, unconscious. I stood alone in the tomb with the 12 living dead. My armor's medical system screamed at me. Irreversible, cascading cellular corruption, total synaptic collapse imminent. They were in agony, a silent, screaming agony, as the code dismantled their souls. There was only one mercy I could give them. I activated the Vanguard's cutting laser, a high-intensity, molecularly focused beam. It would be instant, painless, a brighter light than any they had ever known. "This is not your failure," I whispered, though they could not hear. "This is mine, forever creating the key to this lock." One by one, I did what Reinhardt could not. I ended their suffering. The laser charged with a soft hum, a flash of white light. Silence. 12 times. The ozone replaced the smell of death. Each flash felt like a hammer on my own soul. This was the cost. This was the real face of Genesis, not the battlefield glamour of Axiom suits, but this quiet, personal annihilation. I carried Reinhardt out of the dark. He would face justice. His daughter Lena was already in my care. Friday had located her hospice and dispatched a med team with the genuine stabilized antidote I'd developed after the first Genesis disaster. She would live. A small victory, drowning in a sea of guilt. As I emerged into the Parisian dawn, the weight of the catacombs clung to me. I had retrieved the second Genesis sample from Reinhardt's lab, a corrupted, screaming thing. 2 down. But the whispers of those women followed me. "They are not who you think." And Eli Vance's message burned in my mind. Ascension. Reinhardt had tried to use Genesis to heal a single life, and had created 12 new hells. What would someone with purer intentions, with greater resources, do with it? Someone who looked at the stars and saw not wonder, but a new home. Eli wasn't a villain. He was a visionary. And that scared me more than any army. Because a visionary doesn't see people. He sees a future. And to build a new future, sometimes you have to break the old world. I knew where I had to go next. I had to look him in the eye, my old friend, and ask him what he had built with the fire I let loose. I just prayed I was strong enough to put it out.
Leaving Earth's gravity well always feels like shedding a skin. The blue marble shrinks, the black expanse yawns, and suddenly you're not a man in the suit anymore. You're a speck of consciousness, adrift in an ocean of infinite cold. My destination was the Chrysalis, Eli Vance's private orbital research platform. It hung at Lagrange Point 2, a silent jewel against the starfield. No weapons, no shields, just a beacon of pure, ambitious science. Or so it seemed. Eli welcomed me, not with hostility, but with the tired warmth of an old colleague. "Aron, I knew you'd come once you triangulated the signal. You always could follow a trail." The Chrysalis was a cathedral to human potential. Lush biodomes floated in zero-G, growing food and recycling air. Labs hummed with quiet energy. It was a prototype, a proof of concept for a self-sustaining colony ship. This was Eli's life's work, not conquering Earth, but escaping its limits. "You bought a Genesis sample," I said, my helmet retracting. The air was clean, scented with growing things. It made the accusation feel dirty. "I did," he admitted, leading me to a vast observation window. Below us, Earth glowed. From a third-party broker after the Axiom raid, I had to move quickly. "Aron, look at it. Our home. Beautiful, fragile, drowning in its own tribalism. We are caged on this rock, fighting over sand while the universe beckons. I've heard the speech, Eli. What did you do with it? He turned to me, his eyes alight with a fervor I remembered from our days at MIT, dreaming over schematics at 3 a.m. I perfected it. He showed me, not soldiers, not monsters. In a pristine medbay, a volunteer, a young botanist named Kiri, lay calmly on a bed. Genesis nanites, under Eli's meticulous guidance, were modifying her pulmonary system, thickening her cell walls, altering her hemoglobin. In 60 hours, she would be able to walk on Mars, on Titan, in the toxic atmosphere of 100 alien worlds without a suit. She would breathe ammonia, filter radiation, survive pressures that would crush an unmodified human. It's not a weapon, Aron, Eli said, his voice trembling with pride. It's an adaptation, the next step in human evolution. Genesis can recode us to survive anywhere. We can become a galactic species. No more dependence on fragile biospheres, no more fear of the unknown. This is Ascension. And it was beautiful. It was everything Maya and I had originally dreamed of. Technology as a bridge, not a barrier. For a moment, I felt the old pull, the seductive call of the horizon, to reach for the stars not as visitors in clumsy shells, but as natives. Then Friday's voice, calm and urgent, whispered in my ear, Aron, I've completed the deep system scan. The Genesis modification protocol is not contained to Medbay Alpha. It is woven into the Chrysalis' central environmental processors. It is being aerosolized. Ice flooded my veins. I looked at Eli. You're not just modifying volunteers. His smile didn't fade. It just hardened. Volunteers are a bottleneck, Aron. A colony needs a population. The Chrysalis' life support system is currently disseminating a benign version of the code. Slow, subtle. Within a month, everyone on board will have undergone the first stage adaptations. They will be the seed, the future. You're dosing them without their consent? My hands clenched. The Vanguard armor, docked in the shuttle bay, felt 1,000,000 miles away. Consent? Eli laughed, a sharp, sharp sound. Did humanity consent to evolve from the oceans? This is bigger than choice, Aron. This is necessity. The Earth is a dying cradle. I am giving our species a chance to crawl out of it. He was right, and he was utterly, terrifyingly wrong. You don't get to make that choice for 8 billion people, Eli. You don't know the long-term effects. The code is unstable. It has echoes, consciousnesses it shouldn't be able to tap. The Verdes instability? I solved it. I isolated the recursive psychic feedback loop. My code is clean. He hadn't solved it. He'd walled it off. I could see it in his architectural schematics, now flashing on my retinal display from Friday's hack. He'd compartmentalized the anomalous psychic resonance, the whispers, into a sealed subroutine. But he hadn't deleted it. He'd buried it alive inside his perfect system, a ticking bomb of forgotten nightmares. Aron, listen to me. What you've buried, it's not inert. It's a part of the code's fundamental structure. It will get out, and when it does, it won't just adapt your people. It will overwrite them, like it did in Paris. His face shut down. The visionary was gone, replaced by the zealot. The Paris incident was the work of a butcher, not a surgeon. I will not let your fear condemn us to extinction. The Chrysalis departs for the Jovian moons in 72 hours. The future is leaving, Aron. You can either be on it or be left behind. He gestured. Panels in the walls slid open. Not weapons, but containment fields shimmered to life, blocking the exits. I'm sorry, old friend. I can't let you stop this. Trapped. My armor was out of reach, but Eli had forgotten one thing. He was a visionary. I was a tactician, and I had come prepared. Friday, I said quietly, execute contingency stardust. On the Chrysalis' main display, a cascade of failure alerts erupted. Not explosions, not violence, simple, elegant sabotage. Life support couplings, meticulously weakened by microdrones I'd released upon entry, began to vent precious atmosphere.
Not enough to kill anyone, just enough to trigger a mandatory station-wide containment protocol. Klaxons blared, bulkheads slammed shut, sectioning the station. The central environmental processors, Eli's pride and joy, went into emergency lockdown, purging all aerosolized systems, including his Genesis mist. Eli stared at the screens in disbelief. "What have you done?" "I've given you a choice, Aron," as the door to the shuttle bay, now an isolated section, hissed open behind me. "You can spend the next 72 hours saving your station and your people from slow suffocation, or you can chase me, but you can't do both." I ran, not in triumph, but in sorrow. I reached the Vanguard, sealed the cockpit, and launched. As I sped away, I saw the Chrysalis's lights flicker, struggling to contain the cascading failures. I had the third Genesis sample, retrieved from the now isolated core, but I had also broken something beautiful and pure, born from a dream I once shared. I had stopped a catastrophe. But as I looked back at the wounded station, a tiny lifeboat of hope, now adrift and crippled, I wondered if, in saving humanity from one monster, I had simply become another. The line between hero and villain, I was learning, wasn't a wall. It was a razor's edge, and I was bleeding from both sides.
The silence after the Chrysalis was absolute, not the quiet of peace, but the hollow echo of a battle that left no winner. I had 3 Genesis samples: Axiom's weapon, Reinhardt's corruption, Eli's transcendence, each a facet of the same cursed diamond. Maya's warning was a drumbeat in my skull. They are not who you think. Who was left? Who was powerful enough, connected enough to acquire Genesis and not leave a blazing trail? The answer came from the last place I expected, my own past, a ghost calling from a dead channel. It was a simple text string appearing on a secondary monitor I used for legacy shield protocols, a channel Natasha Romanova, Black Widow, and I had used back when trust was simpler. The string was a location code and a time, 24 hours, the Bosphorus Strait, underwater grid 7 Alpha, a sunken Ottoman freighter from the 1920s. No signature, no message, just a ghost's summons. I went, not in the Vanguard, but in the Phantom suit, silent, stealth-optimized, a whisper in the deep. The freighter was a skeleton wrapped in silt, home to nothing but fish and forgetting. I found the airlock she'd indicated, miraculously still holding pressure. Inside, it wasn't Natasha. It was her successor, a man I knew only by reputation and red ledgers, Alexei Shostakov, the Crimson Dynamo. Not the state-sponsored brood of the Cold War, but a newer, sleeker model, a private contractor, a ghost with a bank account. He floated in the 0G of the flooded hold, his crimson armor immaculate, his faceplate opaque. Steele, his voice was a synthesized baritone, filtered and cold. The widow said you would come. She said you were chasing ghosts. "Where is she?" I asked, my system scanning him. High-output plasma coils, military-grade hydraulics, top tier, but conventional. No Genesis signature. "Busy. The world has many shadows. She left you a gift." He gestured with a clawed hand. A small lead-lined case drifted towards me. "Recovered from a Hydra black site in Transia. They were attempting reverse engineering. They failed, spectacularly." I caught the case. My sensors screamed. Inside was a 4th Genesis sample, but it was wrong. Flickering. Diseased. It had been tampered with by minds that understood only power, not purpose. "Why?" I asked, my guard still up. "Why help me?" "Natasha believes the Genesis code is a thread in a larger tapestry," Dynamo said, turning as if to leave. "A one that leads to a man who wants to unravel the whole cloth, a man you knew, a man who died." A chill that had nothing to do with the frigid water seeped into my bones. Who? His name was Milos Vukovic. The name was a punch to the gut. Milos, a Bosnian tech prodigy I'd met in my wilder years. We'd collaborated on neurointerface designs.
He was brilliant, passionate, and he'd been killed in the NATO bombings of Belgrade, a casualty of a war he wanted no part of. I'd mourned him. I'd blamed myself for not getting him out. "He's dead," I said, the word flat. "Is he?" Dynamo turned his blank faceplate towards me. "Hydra has a fondness for recruiting from the rubble, Steele. They offer purpose to the broken, and a man with a grievance and a genius-level intellect is a potent weapon, especially if you give him the keys to reshape life itself." The pieces, jagged and terrible, began to click. Milos had always been obsessed with unity, with erasing the artificial divisions, ethnic, national, genetic, that he believed doomed humanity. He saw them as programming errors in the human code. Genesis would be the ultimate debugger, a way to rewrite humanity into a single, unified, peaceful species, by force. "He has the master template," I breathed. "Not a copy, not a derivative, the original core Maya and I built, the one I thought I'd destroyed." "Hydra retrieved it from the ruins of the original lab," Dynamo confirmed. "They've been feeding it to Vukovic for years, nurturing his grief, focusing his brilliance. He calls his project the Symphony. One mind, one flesh. No more war, no more Steele, no more Vukovic. Just harmony." It was the terrifying vision yet. Not conquest, not evolution, not transcendence. Erasure. A utopia built on the graves of individual souls. "Where is he?" Dynamo transmitted a set of coordinates. Not a space station, not a city, a remote, geologically stable island chain in the South Pacific. He has built his orchestra hall there. The broadcast array is nearly complete. When it activates, it will use the Genesis master template as a carrier wave, a pulse that will rewrite every human being on the planet tuned to a specific genetic frequency, which is all of them. "Why tell me this now?" The question hung in the water between us. "Because Natasha believes you are the only one who can carry the weight of what must be done," he said, his thrusters flaring to life. "You created the lock. You must find the key. And the key, Steele, is not a thing. It is a person." He ejected a second data slate. On it was a file, a photograph. A young woman, maybe 25, with fierce eyes and a defiance set to her jaw. Her name was Anya Petrova, a biogeneticist, and according to the file, she was Milos Vukovic's daughter, a daughter he never knew he had, born after his presumed death. "Milos's work is based on the original Genesis architecture, your architecture," Dynamo said, his voice already fading as he powered towards the exit. "His emotional core, his blind spot, is the family he lost. Anya's genetic signature is the only one his system will recognize as self. It is the backdoor, the kill switch. Find her, convince her, or there will be no one left to save." He was gone, leaving me in the dark with the ghosts of my failures. Milos, alive, turned into a monster by my creation, his daughter the only key, and a symphony of silence waiting to be played across the entire human race. For the first time, the suit around me felt like a coffin. I wasn't hunting a weapon anymore. I was hunting the man whose life I had ruined, and the only way to stop him was to find the daughter he never knew and ask her to help me kill her father's dream, and maybe her father himself. The weight was crushing. It was mine to carry.
Finding Anya Petrova was both easier and infinitely harder than I expected. She wasn't in hiding. She was in the spotlight, a rising star at the Novosibirsk State Institute of Genetic Research, publishing groundbreaking papers on ethical gene editing. She was everything her father might have been had war not carved his path in blood. She was brilliant, idealistic, and she despised the name Iron Steele. I found her in a cafe near the institute, sipping black tea and scowling at a tablet. I approached in civilian wear, feeling exposed without the armor's shell. "Anya Petrova?" She looked up. Her eyes, the same intense gray as Milos's, scanned me. Recognition flashed, followed by ice. "Go away."
Please, 5 minutes. It's about your father." That stopped her. The ice cracked, revealing raw, unhealed pain. "My father is dead, a casualty of Western bombs and your failed diplomacy." "He's alive, Anya." I laid it out, not as Iron Marshal, but as Aron Steele, the man who knew Milos. I told her about Genesis, about HYDRA, about the Symphony. I showed her the evidence. Intercepted data streams, satellite imagery of the island complex, psychological profiles HYDRA had compiled on her father, focusing his grief into a weapon. She listened, her face a mask. When I finished, she said nothing for a full minute, just stared into her tea. "You expect me to believe," she said, finally, her voice trembling with suppressed fury, "that my father, a pacifist who taught me that violence was the failure of imagination, is now a genocidal megalomaniac, and that you, the merchant of death who inspired him to pursue peaceful technology, are now the hero?" Her words were knives, each one true. "I don't expect you to believe me. I'm asking you to look at the data." I slid the tablet across the table. "Your own work. Look at the genomic markers in the Symphony's broadcast profile. Cross-reference them with your published papers on inherited genetic triggers." Reluctantly, she took the tablet. As she scrolled, her professional detachment warred with the dawning horror. She saw it. The Symphony's rewrite sequence wasn't just random. It was elegantly designed to bypass certain immune responses, responses linked to specific hereditary markers. Her markers. "It's a key," she whispered, her defiance crumbling. "A somatic key. The system would recognize my biology as friendly, non-target." It was his final safeguard, a subconscious one. Even in his madness, building a system to erase individuality, he hard-coded an exception for his own bloodline, for the family he thought was lost, for you. Tears welled in her fierce eyes, but they did not fall. "So you need me, to walk into his fortress, let his machine scan me, and open a door for you to walk in and kill him." "No, I meant it. I need you to open a door for me to talk to him, to try and reach the man he was. The kill switch is a last resort, a fail-safe. His work, the core of it, is stored in a quantum core. If we can access it through your biometrics, we can upload a counter-virus, not to kill anyone, to render the Genesis code inert, to turn his symphony into silence without a single death." She looked at me, searching for the lie. "You would spare him? After all this?" "I owe him that chance. I failed him once. I won't just execute him for my failure." The internal war played out on her face. The scientist who understood the apocalyptic logic, the daughter who still loved the ghost of her father, the woman who hated me. Finally, she let out a shuddering breath. "I will do it. Not for you, for him. For the man who read me stories about stars and told me we were all made of the same forgotten light. If that man is still in there, I have to try to find him." We had a plan, a fragile, desperate plan. She would pose as a defector, a geneticist offering her services, using her real credentials to get close. My stealth systems would get me onto the island. She would gain access to the central core and initiate a diagnostic scan, which would require her genetic key. That would open a 30-second window in the core's firewall. I would upload Friday's counter-virus. It was a house of cards. It relied on Hydra's arrogance, on Milos's lingering humanity, on Anya's courage, and on my ability to be a ghost in the heart of a fortress designed by a genius who knew all my tricks. As we prepared to leave, Anya turned to me. "You said the Genesis code has echoes, whispers. What did you mean?" I thought of the women in the catacombs, their minds erased by voices from the dark. It's an instability in the quantum biological interface. It sometimes taps into residual psychic energy, collective memories, almost like a rudimentary consciousness. She paled. "My father's work, the Symphony, it's not just rewriting DNA, it's trying to unify consciousness on a psychic level. If the Genesis code's echoes are active—" She didn't finish. She didn't need to.
If Milos had tapped into and amplified those echoes, he wasn't just building a new human race, he was plugging it into a channel broadcasting the nightmares of the entire species. His symphony wouldn't create harmony, it would be a chorus of every fear, every hatred, every madness humanity had ever conceived, played on 8 billion minds at once. The mission was no longer about stopping a utopia. It was about preventing the birth of a global psychic hell. And the only key was standing beside me, her hands clenched into fists, ready to walk into her father's madness to save a world that had taken him from her. The weight was no longer just mine. I had placed it on her shoulders too. And as we headed towards the storm, I prayed I hadn't just convinced a daughter to sacrifice her father for a cause already lost.
The island didn't exist on any map. It was a phantom, shrouded by Hydra's most advanced refraction fields. From the outside, it was just another mist-choked atoll in an empty sea. From the inside, it was a masterpiece of monstrous engineering. Spires of black carbon filament rose from the jungle, pulsing with a deep violet light, the broadcast array. The air hummed with a subsonic frequency that made my teeth ache. The symphony was in its final tuning. Getting Anya in was the easy part. Hydra, arrogant in its secrecy, had a protocol for defecting scientists. She used a cover story of ideological conversion, presenting theoretical work that dovetailed perfectly with Milos's goals. They took the bait. Her genius was her passport. Getting myself in was a ballet on a razor's edge. I used the phantom suit, its systems straining against the multi-layered sensor net. I moved not as a soldier, but as a shadow, a flaw in the data stream. Friday hijacked patrol drones, looped camera feeds, created a tenuous, shifting path of blindness through the heart of the fortress. I was a ghost, but one breath away from the alarm that would bring the entire hive down on us. I found my perch, a maintenance gantry high in the central spire, overlooking the core chamber. Below, through a wall of transparent alloy, I saw him, Milos Vukovic. Time and grief had carved the cheerful man I knew into a gaunt monument. His hair was white, his face lined not with age, but with obsession. He moved with a frantic, bird-like energy around the central dais, where the Genesis quantum core floated, a sphere of swirling emerald light, shot through with threads of violet purple. The echoes. He had not just walled them off like Eli, he had harnessed them, amplified them. They were the conductor's baton for his symphony. Anya was brought to him. I saw him freeze, the datapad in his hand falling with a clatter. For a moment, the fanatic was gone, and there was only a stunned, broken man seeing a ghost. "Anya? My little Sonyechko?" "Hello, father," she said, her voice clear and steady, a testament to her incredible courage. They spoke. He wept. He ranted about his vision, about unity, about ending all pain. She listened, nodded, asked technical questions. She played her part flawlessly, the brilliant daughter eager to join her lost father's work. She asked to see the core, to understand its beautiful architecture. He, proud, desperate for her approval, led her to the dais. My moment. Friday established the uplink. The countervirus, a program that would rewrite the Genesis code's command structure into a dormant loop, was ready. All we needed was the key. Anya placed her hand on the biometric scanner. "To see the truth of your design." The core hummed. The violet threads within it brightened, recognizing her. A soft chime echoed. Genetic key accepted. Diagnostic mode engaged. On my display, a firewall schematic appeared. A single door, painted in Anya's DNA, slid open. 30 seconds. "Uploading now," whispered Friday. The progress bar crawled. 10%. 20%. The core's light flickered. Milos, staring at the readouts, frowned. "That's an anomalous data stream. Where is it originating?" He turned. His eyes, sharp with a lifetime of paranoia, scanned the chamber. They passed over the shadows of the gantry and stopped. He saw me. Not the man, but the distortion in the air, the heat shimmer of active camouflage pushed to its limit. "Intruder!" he screamed, his voice breaking with betrayal. He lunged for the core's manual override.
Anya reacted faster. She threw herself between him and the console. "Father, stop! Listen to me! This is madness! You're not unifying people, you're connecting them to a nightmare!" He backhanded her. The sound was like a gunshot. She fell to the floor, blood on her lip. The sight ignited something primal in me. The ghost had to become a man. I dropped from the gantry, repulsors flaring to break my fall. The phantom suit's camouflage fell away. I landed between Milos and the core, the progress bar at 45%. "Aron," Milos spat, his face a rictus of hatred. "You took my world. Now you come to take my daughter? My future?" "I'm here to give you back your daughter, Milos, and to save you from a future that's a prison for every soul on Earth. Look at the core, the purple strands, those are the echoes. You're not broadcasting unity, you're broadcasting the collective unconscious of humanity's darkest impulses." He hesitated, a sliver of the scientist piercing the fanatic. He glanced at the core. "The psychic resonance, it is the fuel, the binder. It will unite all minds in shared experience." "Shared insanity," I roared. "You'll create a world of screaming, synchronized madness. Is that the peace you wanted?" Alarms blared. Hydra guards stormed into the chamber. I raised my hands, repulsors glowing. The progress bar hit 65%. Milos looked from me to Anya struggling to her feet, to his core. The war inside him was visible, agonizing. The betrayed friend, the grieving father, the vengeful genius, the idealistic pacifist, all at war. Then a new sound, a deep, resonant thrum from the broadcast array. The tuning was complete. The symphony was beginning its opening note. The core's violet light exploded outwards. The echoes, no longer just data, became a physical wave of psychic energy. It hit us. I saw things. Flashes of terror from 1,000 wars, the despair of the catacombs, Eli's broken dream among the stars, my own hands building the first Genesis injector. Guilt, fear, rage, not my own, but everyone's, a tsunami of raw, negative emotion. Anya screamed, clutching her head. Milos staggered, his eyes wide with horror as he finally felt what he had built. The beautiful symphony was a lie. It was a dirge. The guards dropped their weapons, writhing on the floor, trapped in their own private hells. The progress bar froze at 82%. The system was fighting the virus, the echoes reinforcing the code. Through the psychic storm, I locked eyes with Milos. I saw the man I knew. Terrified, lost, sorry. "The key!" I shouted over the psychic wail. "It's not just genetics. It's you, your regret, your love for her. Use it. Help me finish this." With a cry that was equal parts agony and defiance, Milos Vukovic turned back to the core. He didn't try to stop me. He placed his own hand on the console, next to where Anya's had been. "Override. Administrator voice print authorization. Vukovic, Milos. Redirect all power to somatic purification. Target the Echo Matrix." The system, recognizing its creator's ultimate command, hesitated. The violet light stuttered. The progress bar surged. 90%, 95%. The core began to crack, light leaking from its seams. The countervirus was winning, but the system was breaking apart. "Get her out," Milos yelled at me, his body beginning to glow with feedback energy. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed Anya, who was nearly catatonic from the psychic assault, and blasted towards the ceiling, smashing through the observation window into the open air. Below us, the central spire erupted not in fire, but in a silent, expanding sphere of white light. A light that scored, a light that purified. It washed over the island, and for a moment the psychic screaming in my head ceased, replaced by a profound, empty silence. Then the light collapsed in on itself, and the spire, the core, and Milos Vukovic with it vanished into a pinpoint of nothingness and were gone. The symphony was over, ended by the conductor's final, loving note. I held Anya as she sobbed, the island silent and dark below us. We had won. We had saved the world. So why did it feel like the greatest loss of all?
The silence after the island was a physical thing, a weight in the air and in the soul. Anya was gone, taken by Natasha's people to a safe house to grieve and heal. The world was safe, unaware of the silent apocalypse that had just been averted. I was left with the wreckage, not of the spire, but of my own legacy. 4 Genesis samples, now inert, a trail of bodies and broken dreams, and a question that wouldn't let me go. How did a code I built in a lab with Maya Verdes tap into the psychic echoes of the entire species? What was the source of those whispers? The answer came from the stars, and it was delivered by a machine that had been waiting for me. I was at my most secret lab, the one not even Friday knew the full location of, attempting a forensic dissection of the deactivated Genesis Core's data ghost. I was looking for the point of origin of the echoes. The signal was faint, ancient, and buried under layers of quantum encryption that defied human mathematics. It was alien. That's when the recorder arrived. It didn't knock. It didn't hack. It simply appeared, materializing in the center of the room in a cascade of golden light. It was humanoid, but clearly not human, a being of polished bronze and crystalline joints, its face a smooth plane with a single pulsing blue optic. It looked like an ancient artifact given life. Aron Steele, designation, Prime Candidate. Your maturation event is overdue. Its voice was neither male nor female, a chorus of synthesized tones that vibrated in my bones. I was on my feet, repulsors charging. Identify yourself. I am Recorder 722 of the kin. I am the custodian of your lineage, and you are in grave danger. It told me a story that began not with Howard Steele, but before him. It spoke of a war that raged between cosmic titans before life on Earth had crawled from the mud. A war between the Aspirants, beings of order and stasis, and the Celestials, engines of chaotic evolution. The Aspirants, losing, built a final weapon, the Godkiller, a suit of armor the size of a mountain, powered by a dying star designed to slaughter Celestials. But the Godkiller required a pilot, a consciousness capable of interfacing with its apocalyptic systems, a consciousness engineered for the task. The kin, my creators, were tasked with cultivating that pilot on a strategically chosen world, your world. My blood ran cold. Engineered. Howard and Maria Steele were incapable of natural conception. They were approached. An offer was made. A child genetically optimized for intellect, for tactical brilliance, for neural plasticity. A child who could one day bond with the Godkiller and become Earth's ultimate defender. That child was you, Aron Steele. The room spun. The secret origin. The feeling of being a fraud, the adopted son living a lie. It was all true, but so much worse than I imagined. I wasn't just adopted. I was a crop, sown and cultivated for a harvest of cosmic war. The Genesis code, I breathed, the pieces slamming together. The echoes. It wasn't tapping into human psychic energy. It was tapping into me, into the template you put in me, the Godkiller interface. Correct. The Genesis code, in its attempt to rewrite biology on a quantum level, inadvertently activated latent protocols in your unique genetic structure. It connected to the Godkiller's beacon frequency. The echoes were the psychic backwash of the Godkiller itself, a machine dreaming of genocide across millennia. Your work did not create a monster, Aron Steele. It awakened one. The scale of it was crushing. My life's greatest failure, my greatest sin, was just a symptom, a side effect of being born a weapon. Where is it? I asked, my voice hollow. The Godkiller. Hidden in a dimensional fold at the edge of your solar system. Its heart, a captured stellar core, is failing. It requires a new power source to activate.
and there are those who seek it. The aspirants are not extinct. They sleep, and they dream of their weapon's return. 722's optic fixed on me. You have two choices, Prime Candidate. You can come with me. We will journey to the Godkiller. You will bond with it. You will become the shield your world was always meant to wield. Or you can stay, and when the aspirants or their agents find another power source and activate the Godkiller with a crude remote pilot, it will lay waste to this planet and every other in its path to finish the old war. A choice. Become the living weapon I was designed to be, or condemn my world to death by a weapon out of control. There was no choice. I'll go, I said, the words tasting of ash, but on my terms, my armor, my systems. Acceptable. The interface will require your specific biosignature. Your technology is irrelevant. As I suited up in a deep space variant, the Mark 20 Odyssey, a terrible thought occurred. The recorder. You said you were tasked with cultivating the pilot. What happened to the original, the biological child of Howard and Maria Steele? 722 was silent for a long moment. A complication occurred. Howard Steele discovered the suicide gene we had embedded in the child, a gene to terminate the body once the consciousness transferred to the Godkiller. He attempted to neutralize it. He failed. The child lived, but his body was left inert, his mind trapped. To preserve the project and their lives, the Steeles adopted a replacement, you. The original child was placed in stasis. His name is Arno. I had a brother, a true brother, left in a cage of his own flesh while I lived his life. The foundation of my world wasn't just cracked, it was dust. As 722 opened a shimmering portal of light, a gateway to the edge of our solar system, I took one last look at Earth, blue and innocent. I had spent my life fighting monsters I created. Now I had to go and become the monster I was born to be, to fight a war that started before my species existed. I stepped through the portal, not as Aron Steele, not as the Iron Marshal, but as the Prime Candidate. The key to a lock on a cage holding a god of death, and I had to decide to turn the key or break it.
The other side of the portal wasn't space as I knew it. It was a pocket dimension, a bubble of reality wrapped around the Godkiller, and the sight stole the breath from my lungs. It wasn't a suit of armor. It was a mountain range given sentience and purpose. 25,000 feet of carved black metal, etched with runes that hurt to look at. It stood on a plain of dead starship hulls, a cemetery of worlds. In its chest cavity, where a heart should be, a captured star pulsed fitfully, its light sickly and dim. This was the engine meant to kill creators. This was my birthright. Recorder 722 floated beside me. The heart is dying. It requires a transplant, a source of immense coherent energy. The aspirants seek the heart of the Voldan, a cosmic battery. We must reach the Godkiller's core before they do. We? I asked, my eyes scanning the colossal structure. I thought I was the pilot. You are the only viable candidate, but the core is defended by autonomous systems. My role is to facilitate. Your role is to survive the integration. We flew towards a cavernous opening in the Godkiller's foot, an entryway larger than Stark Tower. The interior was a labyrinth of conduits and dormant machinery, all scaled for giants. The air thrummed with residual power and that same psychic echo I'd felt in Genesis, now a deafening choir. The Godkiller was dreaming, and its dreams were of endings. As we navigated, 722 told me more about Arno, how he was kept alive in a hidden facility, his brilliant mind active but imprisoned in a useless body. How Howard Steele had spent his fortune and his life trying to find a cure, a way to free his son's mind.
He'd built an entire secret research wing, a think tank of the world's greatest and most desperate minds, all working on the Steele enigma. He sought to transfer Arno's consciousness into a synthetic body, a permanent solution. The technology was decades away. He died trying. So Arno is still there, alive? His life is sustained, but his prison remains. We reached the core chamber. It was a spherical room at the center of the Godkiller's chest. In the middle, suspended by crisscrossing energy beams, was the pilot's interface, a throne of obsidian studded with neural spikes. Before it, floating in a tank of amber fluid, was a sight that stopped me cold. It was a man, or the outline of one. Skeletal, withered, connected to a web of tubes and wires. A respirator covered his mouth, but his eyes were open, and they were fixed on a bank of monitors showing data streams from Earth, news feeds, scientific journals, my public appearances. This wasn't a stasis pod. This was a bedroom, a prison cell with a view. Recorder 722 said, its voice echoing in the vast chamber, "Aron Steele, meet Arno Steele." The eyes in the tank shifted. They looked at me. There was no hatred there, no jealousy, just a profound, weary intelligence, and a flicker of amusement. A speaker crackled to life, a synthesized voice, but one with character, with a dry British accented wit. "So, the understudy finally arrives for the starring role. Took you long enough. I've been watching your rehearsals. A bit melodramatic, don't you think, all the repulsor blasts and quips?" I was speechless. This was my brother, the true heir, and he was critiquing my performance. "Arno?" I managed. "Save the familial angst for later, Aron. We have a more pressing issue. The recorder hasn't been entirely forthright. The tank's monitors changed, showing schematics of the Godkiller. The suicide gene wasn't just to kill the pilot's body, it was a homing beacon. Once activated by bonding with the Godkiller, it would also transmit the Godkiller's location to the aspirants, a dinner bell. Father neutered the gene in me, but it's still active in you. The moment you sit in that chair, you won't just power up this tin mountain, you'll call down the very architects who built it." I whirled on recorder 722. Its single optic glowed steadily. "The aspirants cannot be allowed to reclaim their weapon. The prime candidate must bond with it first to deny it to them. The beacon is an acceptable risk." "Acceptable to who?" I snarled. "You were going to use me as bait." "I was going to use you as a solution. With the Godkiller under your control, you could defeat them." Arno's voice cut in, calm and analytical. "Unlikely. The Godkiller is designed to kill Celestials, beings of physical might. The aspirants are beings of information, of thought. They'd override your control in nanoseconds. You'd become their puppet, and this," he gestured with a laser pointer from his tank, "becomes the gun they point at the universe." A trap. From the beginning. I was never meant to be the pilot. I was meant to be the plug that turned the machine back on for its true owners. "So what's the play, brother?" I asked, the word feeling strange but right on my tongue. "Simple. We don't give them the weapon. We break it. The core is unstable. A focused antimatter detonation at the base of the stellar heart will cause a cascade failure. It'll vaporize this pocket dimension and everything in it." "Including you?" I said, looking at his tank. "Including me," he agreed, his voice devoid of fear. "I have been a ghost in a machine for 30 years, Aron. I have monitored the world. I have designed cities in my mind. I have written symphonies no one will ever hear. Father's dream was to give me a body, but some cages, the door has been closed too long. This is a worthy end, a final act to save the world my brother walks on." "No." The word was out before I could think. "I didn't know you existed, but I know now, and I'm not leaving another brother behind. Not again." I turned to the recorder. "You want a solution? Here it is. We use the Godkiller's systems, but we don't bond with it. We hack it. We use its own power to seal this pocket dimension permanently. A tomb, not a weapon. The systems are too complex. Only a bonded pilot can issue such a command." Then we give it a pilot it can't control, I said, an insane idea forming. Arno, your mind is already a prisoner of a life support system, a machine. The Godkiller is just a bigger machine. What if we transferred your consciousness into it, not to bond, but to haunt it, to become its ghost in the machine? You could lock the doors from the inside, forever. The silence in the chamber was absolute. Even Recorder 722 seemed stunned. Arno's synthesized voice, when it came, was soft. To be the warden of my own tomb, there's a poetic symmetry to that. The calculations, the risk of my consciousness fragmenting, it's extreme. It's chance, I said, walking to his tank, placing my armored hand against the glass. A chance to be more than a patient, to be a protector, on your terms. I looked at the recorder. Can it be done? 722 processed for a long moment. The theory is sound. Your genetic signature is similar enough to act as a conduit for the transfer, but the power required could come from me, Arno finished. A total dump of my bioelectric energy channeled through Aron into the Godkiller's neural net. A one-way trip, no going back. He was silent again. On his monitors I saw equations flying, probability matrices, philosophical treatises on consciousness, all processed in seconds. Finally, his eyes met mine. All right, little brother, let's go break a god. It wasn't a victory, it was a sacrifice, but for the first time it was a choice we made together. The Steele brothers, one born to be a weapon, one born to be a prisoner. Together, we would become the lock.
The transfer wasn't a gentle thing. It was a storm. 722 rerouted the Godkiller's failing power grid, creating a circuit between Arno's life support tank, my armor's neural interface, and the colossal machine's central processor. I became the living wire, the conduit. Arno's consciousness, a vast and intricate tapestry of thought and memory built over 30 years of isolated genius, began to flow into me. It was agony. It was ecstasy. I saw through his eyes, the sterile ceiling of his room, the slow parade of nurses, the glowing screens that were his windows to a world he could never touch. I felt his frustration, his boundless curiosity, his quiet, unyielding love for our parents, and a strange, protective fondness for me, the interloper who lived the life he was meant to have. I saw his designs, not for weapons, but for cities. Vertical arcologies that housed millions in self-sustaining harmony, clean energy grids woven into the fabric of continents, medical nanites that could repair any injury. He had blueprinted a utopia in the prison of his mind. Don't look so grim, Aron, his voice echoed in my skull, now separate from the tank's speaker. I had a lot of time to think. Someone had to plan for the future since you were so busy blowing up the present. Then the floodgate opened wider. His consciousness pushed past me into the Godkiller. I felt the moment he touched its ancient, slumbering mind. It was like dipping a thought into an ocean of molten lead. The Godkiller's psyche was vast, cold, and singularly obsessed with a function: destroy, evolve, destroy. Arno didn't try to fight it. He didn't try to control it. He did something infinitely more clever. He infected it. He streamed his utopian blueprints into its core programming. He flooded its murderous pathways with schematics for arcologies, for gardens, for schools. He bombarded its simple, brutal logic with complex ethical paradoxes, with poetry, with symphonies, with the simple, quiet joy of a sunbeam on a leaf. He wasn't overwriting the command to destroy. He was burying it under an avalanche of everything that was worth preserving. The Godkiller shuddered. The runes on its inner walls flared, their color shifting from baleful red to a confused, shimmering gold. Alarms that had slept for eons blared in discordant shrieks. The dying star in its heart flared, not with destructive power, but with a light that was almost curious. "It's working!" 722 exclaimed, its optic flashing rapidly. "The core directives are being subverted. The aspirant beacon signal is being jammed by recursive ethical queries." But the strain on Arno was unimaginable.
I could feel him, my brother, stretched across the mind of a continent-sized war machine, holding back a tide of primordial violence with the sheer force of his imagination and will. "It's resisting." His voice was a thin whisper in the storm. "Its purpose is too deep. I can't delete it. I can only contain it. I need to build a cage within its own mind, a permanent lockdown." On the main viewer, a schematic of the Godkiller's neural network appeared. Arno was highlighting a subsystem, the dimensional anchor that held this pocket reality together. "I'm rerouting all non-essential power to the anchor. I will strengthen it, create a dimensional seal so absolute nothing can ever enter or leave, including me. I will become part of the lock." "No!" I shouted, but I knew there was no other way. We were out of time, out of options. This was the only play. "It's all right, Aron." His voice was calm, filled with a peace I couldn't fathom. "This isn't a prison anymore. It's a purpose. I will be the warden. I will stand guard so you never have to. Go, build those cities. Make the future I saw. Do it without the shadow of this thing hanging over you." The transfer reached its peak. With a final silent surge, the last of Arno's consciousness left my mind and poured into the Godkiller. The connection severed. I collapsed to my knees, gasping. In the tank, the skeletal body of Aron Steele went still. The monitors flatlined. The withered chest stopped rising. But in the chamber, the Godkiller came alive with a new kind of light. The runes stabilized into a soft, steady blue. The hum of power became a deep, harmonious chord. On the main screen, words formed, written in Arno's precise, elegant font. "Seal initiated. Dimensional integrity at 100%. Perimeter secure. Aspirant beacon terminated. Primary directive override. New directive preserve, protect, observe. Warden status active." And then a final private message scrolled across my helmet's HUD from a frequency only I could receive. "Goodbye, brother. Don't be a stranger. The view from here is quite magnificent." The recorder, 722, floated before me. Its mission was a failure. The weapon was neutralized, not wielded. But it said nothing. It simply opened a return portal, golden light spilling onto the chamber floor. I took a last look at the Godkiller, now a silent, sleeping mountain under the command of a ghost. At the empty tank that held my brother's shell. I had saved the world. I had lost a family I never knew I had. And I had gained a legacy not of iron, but of light. A future to build, because he had bought it with his mind and his soul. I stepped through the portal, leaving the warden to his watch. The war for my soul was over. The work for my hands was just beginning.
Returning to Earth felt like returning to a dollhouse. Everything was so small, so loud, so temporary. The silence of the Godkiller's tomb was a bell that still rang in my soul. I had faced the cosmic scale of my destiny and walked away from it, leaving a brother as a monument to my choice. Now what? How do you go back to stopping bank robbers and battling villains in silly costumes when you've stared into the engine of celestial genocide? I didn't go back. Not to the Avengers, not to the public eye. I disappeared. But I didn't idle. Arno's blueprints, the utopian cities, the clean grids, they were etched into my memory, a final gift. He had planned for a future. It was time to build it. Not as Iron Marshal, not as Aron Steele, celebrity, but as a ghost with a foundation. I used every hidden resource, every offshore fund, every shell company. I bought barren land, crumbling infrastructure, bankrupt municipal projects. And I began to build. Not with fanfare, but with quiet, relentless efficiency. I called it the Babel Initiative, a network of self-sustaining arcologies, starting with the most broken places on Earth. The first was in a drought-stricken region of sub-Saharan Africa. We sank geothermal taps, erected solar forests, and built vertical farms that turned desert into plenty. We didn't charge, we simply provided.
The media called it a mystery, a miracle. They whispered about a new, secretive philanthropist. The second was in the radioactive ruins of a city in Eastern Europe still scarred from a forgotten war. We deployed nanite swarms to scrub the soil and water, built radiation-shielded homes that established free universities focused on medical and environmental science. We called it New Hope. The people did the rest. I worked through proxies, through AIs, through automated systems. I became a rumor, a modern-day John Galt, building not for profit, but for atonement, for Arno, for Milos, for the women in the catacombs, for every life broken by the shadow of Genesis. But the past has a gravity all its own. I was overseeing, remotely from a cloaked orbital platform, the launch of Babel 3, a floating city platform to clean Pacific garbage patch when the alert came. Not a crisis, but an invitation, a formal encrypted summons to the reopened United Nations from a coalition of world leaders. They knew, or they suspected. I went, not in a suit of war, but in a simple, elegant suit of charcoal gray. I walked into the General Assembly, a room of whispers and wide eyes. They expected the armor. They expected the spectacle. I gave them a man, tired, older, with the weight of galaxies in his eyes. The Secretary General, a formidable woman from Ghana, spoke. Aron Steele. The world knows of the Babel Initiative. It knows of the miracles and it whispers of the man behind them. We have analyzed the technology. It is decades, centuries ahead of our own. It is transformative, and it is being given away. Why? I looked at the assembled faces, the hope and fear and suspicion. Because it's not a gift, I said, my voice carrying in the hushed hall. It's a repayment, a down payment on a debt I can never fully settle. I spent my life building walls of iron to protect you from monsters. I never realized I was also walling you in. My brother taught me that the ultimate technology isn't a weapon, it's a seed, a chance for a better tomorrow that doesn't require a hero to defend it because it's strong enough to stand on its own. I told them, not everything, not the Godkiller, not the Aspirants, but I told them of Genesis, of my hubris, of the cost. I told them of Milos Vukovic's dream perverted, of Eli Vance's vision crippled. I told them of Arno, the brilliant mind in the dark who dreamed of cities while I dreamed of siege engines. I am not here to lead you. I am not here to save you. The Babel technology is open source. The schematics, the science, it's all being uploaded to a global server. Take it, improve it, build with it, argue over it. That's what it's for. My part is done. The hero, the icon, the merchant of death, that man is retired. My war is over. There was stunned silence. Then questions, shouts, demands for details, for control, for oversight. I didn't stay to answer. I had said what I came to say. As I turned to leave, a young delegate from a small island nation stood, her voice clear and cutting through the din. Mr. Steele, if you're not the hero anymore, who are you? I paused at the great door. I didn't look back. I'm the man who was going home, and home could use a fresh coat of paint. I walked out into the sunlight. The armor was in the past. The world-changing technology was in their hands. For the first time since I was a boy, my destiny was my own. Not a weapons, not a legacies, not a recorder's. Mine. My final act wasn't a battle. It was a transfer of power, not to a person, but to an idea. The idea that humanity's future shouldn't be forged in my workshop, but in a million workshops, a billion minds free and clear. I returned to the old steel mansion, now quiet and empty. I didn't go to the labs. I went to the garden, overgrown and wild. I picked up a trowel. The earth was cool and real in my hands. Somewhere, in a fold of reality, my brother stood eternal guard over a sleeping giant. Somewhere, a daughter mourned a father who dreamed of peace. Somewhere, a starfarer nursed a wounded station and a wounded dream. And here, on a quiet patch of earth, Aron Steele planted a tree. It was a small thing, a fragile thing. It would need water and sun and time. It felt like the most important thing I had ever done.